Hey everybody, I'm Alan with Dad's Playing Games, and this is the first video in a strategy series I'm doing on the Soldiers of Frostgrave. I'm hoping these will be useful for both new players as they create their first warband, and for experienced players interested in looking at or discussing soldier strategies. Be sure to check the details below for links to our other Frostgrave material, as well as possibly some updates for things to come with our channel. And you'll also find timestamps there in case you want to jump ahead or behind at any point during the video. And one thing you'll notice as you're watching this video is when we play Frostgrave here on Dad's Playing Games, we typically use Legos and other bricks for all of our figures and for our terrain. In these soldier strategy videos, I've grouped all the soldiers into what I'm calling some classes. And those classes are Grunts, Basic Soldiers, Advanced Fighters, Advanced Bowmen, Heavy Soldiers, and Specialized Soldiers. There will be a separate video for each of these classes, and for all of these classes, we'll be looking at a few things about them. We'll be looking at cost, their stats and equipment, their specific uses, their viability both early game and late game, and comparisons within their class against each other. For this video, we'll be looking at the Grunts, which are the thugs and the thieves. I call this class the Grunts because both soldiers in this class are cheap at 20 gold crowns, and they make up the majority of a starting warband. So when we start looking at their stats and equipment, as far as their similarities, neither of these soldiers have any armor, and they both have a lowly 10 health. The thug is probably the most basic of all the soldiers. Almost everything about them is just generic. They have a move of 6, which is pretty common, a fight of +2, which isn't good but is okay, I suppose, and they carry hand weapons. The main thing about their stats that sets them apart is they have a -1 to their will stat. I really like the theme of that because it's almost like you just went down to the pub or the docks, found some random guy, handed him a sword or an axe, and said, "Hey, come fight with me." So those probably aren't the most reliable people to have join your warband. So that makes sense, they have a -1 to their will. For thieves, the main thing that sets them apart is their speed. Thieves have a move of 7, which even though that's only one more than 6, it's actually pretty significant in this game. But that increased movement comes at the cost of combat efficiency. They have a fight of just +1, and they're carrying a dagger. And in this game, daggers cause -1 damage, which means you don't really want this guy in combat. Thieves are more determined than thugs, and with that, they don't have the -1 to their will stat like thugs do. And that's because they have a purpose in life, and that's when we come to their uses. For a thief, their main job is to get treasure off the board. And if you're doing much else with a thief, you should probably swap him out for another soldier once he dies, which he will if that's what you're doing with him. I personally like to use 1 or 2 thieves to grab the treasures that are closest to my side of the table and just get to them quickly and get them off the board. If one of them can quickly secure a treasure, that means you have at least 1 treasure secured, and which means you've at least got something even if everything else in the battle goes wrong for you. And that seems to be a pretty good way to put that movement of 7 to good use. As for the thugs are a little more versatile than a thief. I usually like to send them maybe at a treasure towards the middle of the board. They're a little better prepared for combat, but oftentimes they just serve as kind of a warm body. They're good at adding combat support to other soldiers, and to be honest, sometimes they're good at just simply being a meat shield, while another soldier tries to pull a treasure off of the battlefield. With these differences in mind between a thug and a thief, I read a pretty good point on the Frostgrave Facebook page. Player Ian Kirkland made the point that having more than 2 thieves, especially when using the updated treasure placement rules in the Maze of Malcor book, isn't the best idea, as you'll need some soldiers with better combat skills to get the more contested treasures off the board. So having just 1 or 2 thieves might be the best way to go with them. As far as early game versus late game viability for thugs and thieves, they both serve a good purpose early in the game just because they're cheap. So they're easy to come by early on. However, I think between the two, I think that the thug starts to lose his viability quicker than the thief does, simply because they're just so generic. You'll see in the next video, when we talk about the basic soldiers, that those soldiers, they cost 50 gold. That's the infantryman, archer, and crossbowman, and pretty much everything about their stats and equipment is superior to a thug. And I've found thugs are usually the first soldiers to go when I can afford to hire some better units. Thieves, with their fast movement, hold up a little better as the campaign goes on. It costs at least 80 gold crowns for another soldier that has a movement of 7. So if the thief is there mainly just for their speed to get a treasure off the board, there aren't any other good cost-effective ways, at least early in the campaign, to do that. And while I wouldn't expect anyone to buy more thieves later in the game, they are more likely to be in your warband later in the game, simply because if they are just grabbing a close treasure, they're not going to die, and so they're not going to necessitate replacement like a thug who just dies constantly might. So comparing these two grunts, the thief and the thug, they both offer something different and fulfill different roles within the warband. However, I think the strength of the thug, that slight versatility they have, wears off pretty quick as you start hiring new soldiers, whereas the strength of the thief, with that increased movement, is really useful at any point during a campaign. Even early in the campaign, I think having that increased movement, being able to pull a treasure or 2 off quicker, will probably outweigh the combat bonus you'll get if you go with a thug instead. So, if forced to make a decision between do I choose a thug or do I choose a thief, I would say a thief is better than a thug. Unless, as stated earlier in the video, if you already have 2 thieves and you have 20 gold crowns to spare, then go with a thug. And that's my analysis on the grunts. I'm interested to know your thoughts and experiences with thugs and thieves, if you agree with my assessment or if you disagree, and perhaps if you have one that you prefer, if you always go with thugs or always go with thieves. So let me know in the comments what you think about these grunts. Also, be sure to click like or subscribe down below so you can keep up with all of the content that Dad's Playing Games is releasing. And with that, I'm Alan with Dad's Playing Games. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.